All right, you guys. First one's up is from Cohn Jampea. Great news. HBO has announced a 2-hour behind-the-scenes look at the making of the final season of Game of Thrones. It'll air a week after the finale and will be an actual documentary movie production like The Director and The Jedi. I love stuff like this, and I can't wait. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so listen, a lot of people have been wondering and asking the question, what's HBO going to do when they don't have Game of Thrones anymore? I know, stretch it out another week. And they're going to be doing a documentary that will air 1 week after the series finale. It's going to be a 2-hour documentary movie on the behind the scenes and making of and the trials and tribulations of making the final season of Game of Thrones, a full 2-hour feature. Now, this is from Deadline, and they wrote the report on this, and they wrote this. Says HBO, much more than just a making of documentary. This is a funny, heartbreaking story told with wit and intimacy about the bittersweet pleasures of what it means to create a world and then have to say goodbye to it. Finley, that's the director of the film, the documentary, Finley was given unprecedented access for the feature-length doc, which HBO describes as an up-close and personal report from the trenches of production, following the crew and the cast as they contend with extreme weather, punishing deadlines, and an ever-excited fandom hungry for spoilers. And we can all get an amen out of that for sure. Rob, you know, you're probably more than any of us here on the show looking forward to this documentary or looking forward to Game of Thrones. You heard about this documentary. What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, it sounds like, you know, being somebody who came from that world, making these behind the scenes documentaries.
Yes, you did.
No one's paying for them anymore. So to see a full-fledged, full-on feature-length documentary about the making of something like this when somebody has that kind of access, we just don't see it anymore. And I think there's a real hunger amongst audiences, especially now, because people have had decades in some cases to devour these big making of documentaries. And that HBO spent the money and invested in this, I think is great. And I think we're going to get, I really think it will, for a documentary, it's going to pack an emotional wallop for anybody who loves the show, because it really is. Game of Thrones is now 10 years in, like the MCU. It's taken 10 years, more than 10 years, to make all of these seasons. And I think it's just going to be wonderful to be able to see this. And, you know, the behind the scenes on Game of Thrones, we've been getting little behind the scenes things on the Blu-rays and things like that, but not something of this nature and of this magnitude. And you know, the fact that they've spent so much time and they spent each one of these episodes is like a feature now unto itself. It's going to be, I think, really special. I'm really looking forward to this. And when I read the announcement, I'm like, man, you know, just seeing the insights of how the actors feel and how the production staff feels, and Weiss and Benioff and the pressures they felt. And what is it like for George R.R. Martin to see his story concluded when he himself hasn't even finished writing it? You know, what's that going to be like? And I'm really excited for this. I can't wait.
Ashley, I know you're a Game of Thrones fan. What did you think about this news?
Oh, I cannot wait. Yeah, I'm so excited that they're doing this. I know that John, you guys feel strongly about special features and everything, but I don't normally watch special features of stuff except for Game of Thrones. I've seen, like, every time I finish an episode, I watch the making of the episode. And I can't wait for this. We're going to have like a whole insider look of the entire thing. It's going to be awesome. I mean, I don't see any drawbacks. Like, it's great. I'm just so happy that they're doing this for fans.
You know, it is funny because, Rob, you point out, like, people don't pay for this stuff anymore, but there seems to be a real hunger out there for it, because I know, like, that little thing that they do at the end of each episode of Game of Thrones where they show you like a little mini behind the scenes, like a 5-minute long thing. I thought that was brilliant. Number one, because fans just like seeing it, but it gets fans all the more invested in the show. They now feel like they're a part of the show. And this idea of doing this one more week, I mean, this thing, the ratings on this 2-hour documentary, particularly coming just 1 week after the series finale, is going to be huge. I mean, so many people are going to watch this. It's a nutty good idea. And Rob, as somebody who has not only been involved in making this behind the scenes feature stuff, you're an award winner, but you've won awards for your behind the scenes stuff on this kind of thing. Talk a little about, I mean, just for a second before we move on here, but about, you know, the challenges of making this type of content.
Well, I think the hardest part is being able to get the kind of material that is worth watching. And one of the things about, I would call us auteur DVD producers, people like Charlie de Lauzirika or Cliff Stevenson, who you know, myself, is that we usually worked hand in hand or in tandem with the directors. And because of that, all the rest of the cast and crew knew that we were supposed to be there. Normally, when you're an EPK producer, an electronic press kit producer, your crew stays back and just kind of films everything from a very sort of objective standpoint. But when you're someone like one of us, we really get into everybody's faces. And we're there to ask questions, and people know that they can talk to us and open up to us. And you kind of have to know how to navigate a set to get what you need. And once you have the cooperation of the crew and the actors especially, they'll talk to you. And if you walk up to them, even in the middle of a work day where there's all kinds of stresses happening, when you have that going on and you're able to get that candid feedback from the cast and crew, that's when you start getting your gold. That's when you start getting the stuff people want to see. Because especially actors, when you're interviewing actors, people don't want to hear actors talk about, let me tell you about my character, because they watch the show, so they know the characters. What they want to do is they want to know, what is it like for them as actors to have to bring those characters to life in such difficult conditions and these long hours and the horrible weather. And they shot the Battle of Winterfell apparently for like 2 months during the nighttime, which is like the Battle of Helm's Deep. That kind of stuff, people start to go nutty. And if you're there, you get to capture that loopiness on camera, and it's fascinating to see. And I'm sure that this filmmaker had all of that access, so we're going to get something, I think, really, really special. And I think there's a hunger for it now because the studios aren't paying for it anymore. And HBO certainly had their flush with Game of Thrones cash, so they spent the money, they took the time, and I think we're going to get something that we haven't seen in years, and I can't wait.
Yeah, and I think they're getting a lot of viewership on this thing, like a hell of a lot of viewership. All right.
If they do, like you said, maybe we'll get more. You know, maybe we'll get more. I hope we do.
I also want to say that, you know, from an actor perspective, we should really appreciate the fact that the actors actually allowed this to happen. Because I did a feature and we had like a documentary style thing going on as well. They wanted to do a making of. And, you know, sometimes I was tired after shooting for the entire day and I didn't want really a camera in my face. And I wanted to have some private moments and some privacy and like eating lunch and not having people follow me around and stuff. But so like we should really appreciate the fact that like Emilia Clarke and all of these like amazing actors are allowing us to have this insider knowledge too, where they probably didn't even have, they had less of a break off camera. So
that's actually a very, very good point. And part of being a great documentary crew is knowing when your actors don't want to be put on camera. And that's something you can't really teach. You just have to know.